Yo, what's going on, buddy? This is Dylan Talk Sports. My name is Dylan. In this video, what I'm going to be doing is we're going to be talking about Dave Canales, I think I'm pronouncing the name right, being hired as the new head coach of the Carolina Panthers. Now, I realize whenever you see in this video, it's going to be very late from whenever he was actually hired. What I'm going to be doing in this video is I'm going to be talking about kind of, is this the right hire, bad hire, good hire? I think it's the good hire, realistically. I think it's a good hire. He was the former offensive coordinator of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. From what he did in his past so far, from what we've seen him restructure Geno Smith's career with bringing him back to life. We thought he was just going to be a career backup, but when Russell Wilson left, he's been able to be a really good starter there in Seattle, signed a massive contract, and now so far we've seen with Tampa Bay, we saw Baker Mayfield. We thought his career was done, but he's able to resurrect his career under Dave Canales and become a really good quarterback there in Tampa Bay. And now he's going to be taking his talent or his coaching talent down to Carolina and to take on his next project, which is Bryce Young. Will he be able to fix Bryce Young? That remains to be seen. But like I said in the beginning, I'm going to go ahead and kind of talk about Dave Canales, if him being the new head coach there, what he kind of brings to the table, and also what the Carolina Panthers team looks like now and what they can possibly transform it into. Because I'm not going to lie, if he can fix Bryce Young, they're not going to go win the Super Bowl next year, but they can realistically transform this team within about 2 to 3 years. Hell, for all I know, they could possibly make the playoffs next year. So without further ado, if you're going to enjoy it, as always, make sure you go and drop a like onto this video. Be very much appreciated if you do so. But without further ado, let's get into it. All right, before we go any further, I'm going to have this entire link here that I'm going to be kind of reading everything down in the description down below. So if you want to go read it for yourself, completely by yourself without me talking, feel free to do so, as well as this article here that we're also going to talk about. So first up, I want to talk about his kind of coaching past, not only him with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, but also him with the Seattle Seahawks. And you can see kind of how far back he's gone. He was with the Seahawks for quite a bit of years. He was there from 2010 to 2012 as just an offensive quality control coach. Then in 2013, 2014, he moved over to still quality control coach, but then became an assistant quarterback coach. 2015 to 2017, he was the wide receivers coach, and then 2018, 2019, he became the quarterback coach, and then from there, he kind of moved over to just being offensive pass game coordinators, and then back to a quarterback coach. And then ultimately last year, where we saw he finished up being an offensive coordinator with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers when Byron Leftwich was fired, and then Dave Canales came in. He was able to take Baker Mayfield and make him be a pretty decent quarterback. Now, like I said in the intro, the big thing for Dave Canales coming in here, he needs to get Bryce Young back to what we saw at Alabama, and that's right here where it says, and I quote, former coach, Towson University coach Pete Shinnick, I think is how you say it, says here, and I quote, "This is the perfect guy to get Young back to that level that we saw in college," quote. Basically, he's saying, and like I just said, if you want that Bryce Young from Alabama, you're going to be winning games. If you see the Bryce Young we saw last year, where he was just running for his life, couldn't see the picture clearly out there, receivers weren't really getting open that much, it's going to be a long-ass season, and we saw this last year. He only won 2 games. And I will say, I trust Dave Canales to be able to fix Bryce Young, because like it says here, some of the accolades that he has, he was able to bring Geno Smith and help him win Comeback Player of the Year in 2022. He learned under the Pete Carroll tree, as it says here. He was there from USC and then went to Seattle with him for many, many years, as we saw, for about like 12, 13 years. So basically, he was able to work with Russell Wilson. He was able to work with Geno Smith, make Geno Smith a very good quarterback. And as we saw with Russell Wilson, Russell Wilson was pretty damn good whenever he was with Dave Canales. He was flinging that football there in the later part of his career whenever Dave Canales developed more into being the receiver coach and then became the quarterbacks coach and kind of the pass game coordinator. That's when Russell Wilson was very much thriving. We've seen Russell Wilson leave the Seattle Seahawks, go to the Broncos, and he's not been the same quarterback. Geno Smith, most of his career, he was just, I'm not going to lie, a bum. He comes to Dave Canales, and he's a pretty damn good quarterback. Last year, we saw a little bit of like an up and down season from Geno Smith, more or less because Dave Canales was not there. Dave Canales takes his talent, he goes to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. What do we see? Baker Mayfield come in. Baker Mayfield, he's been with the Browns for about 3 or 4 years. Things were just not going the way we thought it was going to. Browns decided to move on. Then he goes from the Panthers. Panthers didn't want him, and Panthers pretty much said, fuck this, we can't keep you around. You're just up and down. We already benched you. They released him. He goes to the Los Angeles Rams. The Rams do pretty good with him. And what kind of happens? I think what people have said is the Rams run a system that's a little bit similar to what Dave Canales is running. So it all kind of worked out for him to where he didn't have to learn a whole fuckload system all over again. It was a little bit relevant to him from what I've seen Baker Mayfield say in interviews. Now, the thing that kind of helps Baker Mayfield and also Geno Smith be able to resurrect their careers, it says right here, and this is the things that he's going to come in and do to help Bryce Young, and what was the main thing that he helped Baker Mayfield and Geno Smith with. Like it says here, fixing Young, Canales' top priority is not going to be a miracle scheme. His philosophy is to play to the strength of his players and be aggressive, something he learned from Carroll, whose focus was on scoring points. He says in the interview, and I quote, "I'm never going into a game saying we're going to pound the rock or we're going to spread it out and rip them." Quote, Canales said during a Week 16 news conference in Tampa Bay, quote, "I tried to go into the game and say, quote, what are they giving us today? Quote. And I think that's a really good thing. Basically, you just figure out what is your player good at. What was Baker Mayfield good at? He had a good arm. He was accurate. Get him back into those types of things that he was good at college. And he hit on it, and Baker Mayfield thrived last year. Geno Smith, what was he good at? He's an athlete. He can run around and he can make a deep throw. They got him back into doing that stuff, and he was just like some kind of wild card out there playing for quarterback for the Seattle Seahawks. And what can they do with Bryce Young? What did he do good at Alabama? He could just scramble around, he could make plays, and he could just find random guys getting open. You need to have receivers, though, and you need to have an offensive line that can somewhat protect a little bit, even though Alabama's offensive line wasn't the greatest because, like I said, Bryce Young liked to scramble a little bit and use his legs to make big plays. You got to have good receivers to do that stuff, though. As we know, last year, the scoring issue was the big thing for the Carolina Panthers. They tied with New England for last in the NFL with 13.9 points per game. That is not going to cut it unless your defense is like the 0-1 Ravens or the 85 Bears. They also ranked last in the league in yards per game, 265.3 yards a game, and Young finished 29th out of 30 qualified players in total QBR at 33.3. And apparently they were also basically the worst team when it comes to downfield passing game. And it says here, he's going to make that a focal point to come in and try to get that downfield pass game back into the Carolina Panthers. Because it says right here, one of Canales' selling points to the Panthers was Tampa Bay went from the 24th in the NFL in downfield passing 6.9 yards per attempt in 2022 to 3rd at 8.9 in 2023. Another thing I do like here, it says here one person said he's got a great knack for speaking not just to people, but into people to get them to see what their fullest potential can be. So after reading all that, here's kind of what I'll say about Dave Canales. I think he's going to be a good coach. I think he's going to be able to help build the Carolina Panthers back up to what they need to do. I thought they were going to go more of like a different route. I thought they were going to go with somebody like a Ben Johnson. Maybe if he would have left the Detroit Lions. Obviously, we now know that Ben Johnson chose to stay with Detroit. When the news broke that Dave Canales was going to be the head coach, I'm not going to lie, I was a little bit shocked. But then as I kind of thought about it, I was like, this makes sense. You look at what Bryce Young was last year, did not look good. You look at what he can be this year coming forward with his second year, his sophomore season. Dave Canales could really fix Bryce Young. But like I said, to kind of wrap it up, here's what they need to do. They got to get an offensive line around him because there's a difference between what Alabama's offensive line was, where like they were good-ish, but not the best. And Carolina Panthers offensive line is just so bad. They need to get a tackle or at least 2 tackles or somebody in free agency, do something to get an offensive line built up for that man. And then you got to get some receivers out there. You got to get receivers. You already traded away DJ Moore to the Chicago Bears whenever you traded away for the #1 overall pick to get Bryce Young. You don't even have your first round pick this year. The Bears are going to be using it. Whether the Bears use it or trade it away, that pick is not yours. You got to find a way to get receivers, and you got to find a way to get off the line. Your defense is something. That's what I'll say. It's something. You weren't awful, but you weren't the best. You weren't the best, but you weren't god awful. You were bad, but not god awful. And I think as another, if you give it to your team another year, you guys can develop. You get a good defensive coordinator in there. Your defense can figure itself out, and then you, Dave Canales, can take this offense and do what you need to make it good. Whether it's running the ball, throwing it deep, getting some read options, or just like I said, let Bryce Young use his God-given abilities and his scrambling abilities and his playmaking ability to just go make plays. And like I said a couple minutes ago, I don't see them winning the Super Bowl by God's any mean, but I can see them making the playoffs. It's very doable. Like we just saw last year, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers won that division going 9-8. I realized the Saints went 9-8 as well, and they could get better. And I realized the Falcons, if they go get a decent quarterback in the draft or whatever they have to do to get a quarterback or free agency, they could be really good this year. I'm just telling y'all, don't sleep on the Panthers. Do not sleep on the Panthers. But other than that, I think I'm going to wrap it up there. Hopefully you guys did go on to enjoy today's video. If you did enjoy, as always, make sure you go and drop a like on today's video. Be very much appreciated if you do so. If you want to watch the entirety of today's video, thank you very much. And like I said, if you have a different opinion on the whole thing, if you think Canales was the right hire, bad hire, if you think they should have went with somebody different, if you think he's going to, like I said, leave him to the playoffs, you think I'm crazy or not crazy on that whole opinion, like I said, leave your complete opinion down in the comment section down below as to what you think about the whole situation. If you're a fan of the content that I do post here and you want to go and hit that big red subscribe button, feel free to do so. And do not forget to hit that little notification bell to be notified the second I post. But without further ado, this has been Donald Talk Sports. Have a great day. Peace.